There's a phase a lot of smart creators who are trying to build a business get stuck in. This phase is dangerous because it looks productive, but it quietly keeps you broke. It's not procrastination or laziness, but something I call the almost ready loop. It's the phase where you're learning, refining, and improving things that technically matter, but month after month, nothing actually changes. You're stuck exactly where you were 6 months ago. Now, when I say the almost ready loop, I'm talking about a very specific pattern. I'm not referring to people who are beginners in their niche. I'm talking about creators who actually have a skill or expertise around their topic. People probably even come to you for advice or tell you your content is helpful. So when you realized you can actually help people, you thought, I should be able to get paid for this. But instead of actually putting something out there, you stay in preparation mode. You keep tweaking your offer, playing with your logo, or watching more tutorials instead of choosing something concrete and testing it. And you don't do this because you're actually stuck, but because you're almost confident enough to commit, but haven't totally convinced yourself. You're almost ready to start, but just not quite yet. Now, here's the part most people miss. Smart creators don't get stuck in the almost ready loop because they're afraid of hard work. They get stuck because being smart gives them a very comfortable place to hide. When you're intelligent, you can always find something productive to do. You can keep learning more so you get smarter. And as you learn more, you can keep refining what you've already built, even if you haven't launched it yet. And none of that feels wrong or like avoidance. It actually feels the opposite, like you're working hard and being productive. But there's one big problem. None of it forces you to do the one thing that changes everything, which is to commit to one specific thing, put it out into the world, and let reality respond to it. See, being smart gives you options, and options feel safe. Because when you don't commit to one clear direction, you never have to fully stand behind anything. If something starts to feel uncertain, uncomfortable, or doesn't work right away, you can tell yourself the smart move is to just adjust, pivot, or try something else. And that doesn't feel like quitting, it feels right. But what's really happening is you're never staying with one thing long enough to let the real world push back. So instead of committing to a clear decision, you keep things open so you can easily change course. And open feels safe, but it means that you're never going to get real feedback. Because if nothing is clearly defined, you can't get rejected or fail. But at the same time, you can't be accepted or succeed. So even though you're always busy, your income doesn't actually go up. You just stay stuck. This is why trying harder usually makes it worse. When smart creators don't get results, they don't pause, reassess, and change course. They just learn even more stuff. So they feel productive, even though nothing actually changes. All of this reinforces your current behavior, which only tightens the almost ready loop. Because you're not avoiding work, you're avoiding the moment where your thinking turns into a single clear decision. Once you see that pattern, you can't unsee it. So, why does it matter if you recognize the pattern? Because it puts you at a fork in the road. Either you keep going down the path you've been on, or you make a shift and choose something different. But most people don't make that shift, even once they see it. Because the truth is, change is scary. Changing means accepting that you've been doing the wrong thing. And most people don't want to admit that they've been wasting time. It's easier to pretend and convince yourself that you're working hard than admit that you're avoiding the actual thing you should be doing that will have a real impact on your business. Unless you admit your mistakes and change your behavior by committing to one thing, you'll never get feedback from the world. You won't see the real problems in your business, and you won't get any clarity. And if you're thinking, okay, but what if I don't feel confident enough yet? Well, that's the point. You don't get confident and then decide. You decide, and confidence catches up. Taking action lets you see what you're really capable of. It lets you believe that you're someone who makes things happen, even when it's tough, and that you're capable of figuring things out if they go wrong. Every meaningful jump I've seen creators make happen this way. Not once everything felt perfect, but once they stopped asking, "Is this ready?" and started asking, "Is this clear enough to test?" Because the moment you start testing, reality finally pushes back. People respond, sometimes positively, sometimes not at all, and sometimes they surprise you with something you didn't expect. And that feedback will give you more clarity in a week than 6 months of preparing ever will. Right now, everything feels fuzzy because nothing is defined tightly enough to be wrong. And as long as nothing can be wrong, nothing can really work. So the real decision isn't what's the smartest plan, it's am I willing to choose one clear direction, knowing it won't be perfect, and let reality show me what to fix. That's the fork. One path keeps you in preparation mode, trapping you inside the almost ready loop. The other puts you into a new feedback loop that actually moves you forward. And once you take that step, things feel lighter. Not because it's easy, but because it's real. Because you're no longer just carrying everything in your head, you've actually put it into something that exists in the real world. That's the difference between being busy versus actually making progress. And here's the important part nobody really talks about. The almost ready loop doesn't just delay money, it slowly reshapes how you see yourself. The longer you stay here, the more you start to identify as someone who is getting close instead of someone who finishes things and moves on. Since you're always doubting your ideas, you start to trust them less. You second guess each decision and spend weeks tweaking something that will barely move the needle in your business. Even though you feel productive, you always feel like you're behind because you have nothing to show for all your hard work. If you aren't making decisions and putting something out there, you never get feedback on what's working. You can't tell yourself, I built that, tested it, and learned from it. This takes a huge toll on your confidence. Instead of building and compounding, your confidence is constantly resetting. Every new idea feels like you're starting over, and every new attempt to find clarity feels heavier than it should. And over time, this creates a subtle but dangerous kind of burnout. Not the dramatic kind where you want to quit everything and burn it all to the ground, but the quiet kind where you're still showing up each day just with less excitement and less conviction. You stop believing that things can actually move forward because you haven't seen real movement in a long time. Everything has lived in your head for so long that you forget what momentum even feels like. And when that happens, you slowly lose trust that things will ever work. And that's the real danger. Not that you try something and fail publicly, but that over time, you start to expect that nothing will really go anywhere. You start to feel like making decisions is risky, like committing is how you end up wasting time or looking stupid. Like every time you try something, you fail, when in reality, the only reason it hasn't paid off yet is because you haven't stayed with one clear thing long enough to get real feedback. This is why the almost ready loop is so dangerous and expensive. it doesn't cause things to implode overnight. It just quietly sets a ceiling on what's possible. So, how do people actually get out of this loop? Well, let me start by making this clear. It isn't by working harder or finding a better strategy. They get out by shrinking the problem. See, most creators think the decision they're avoiding is some massive, irreversible commitment. Like they need to get their offer perfect, their positioning airtight, and their whole business mapped out before they make a move. But that's not the real decision they need to make. The real decision is much smaller than that. It's choosing one clear direction that's specific enough to be tested. This decision isn't permanent, which is why it doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be clear enough that reality can respond to it. It might be as simple as deciding who you're actually helping instead of keeping it vague, or deciding what you're selling and committing to it. You might decide to test one thing for the next 30 days and let everything else wait. That's all it is. Once something is defined tightly enough to be wrong, it's also defined tightly enough to work. And the moment you make the decision to put it out into the world, you break free from the almost ready loop. Because now you're not just trying to think your way forward anymore. You're letting feedback guide your path towards building a successful business. You put your ideas out there, people react, you learn from it, and you adjust moving forward. And suddenly, clarity starts showing up where it never could before. You don't need to become smarter, you just need to put something out there so reality can push back. Now, if this resonated with you, it probably means you already know what decision you actually need to make. You don't need the perfect plan or a full strategy, just the one clear thing you've been circling around but haven't committed to yet. So before you watch anything else, take a minute and ask yourself, what's the smallest version of this I could put into the world and actually test? And let me know in the comments what you think this is. I'd love to hear where you guys are at. I'll also be breaking down exactly how to do this in future videos. So if you liked this, feel free to subscribe so you can see that when it's out. But for now, don't stay here thinking. Go choose something concrete, put it out there, and let reality respond.